Says I've got the live. There we
Yep.
go.
We got the message, yeah.
All right, welcome everybody. It's Labor Day weekend, September 2022. Western North Carolina Linux Users Group. So welcome all. I don't think we have anything specific planned for today, right? So let's just see what everyone's got going on. Who we start with? I don't think I ever start with Larry for whatever reason. He always ends up further to the right. So I'm gonna start with Larry.
He just shut himself off.
Larry's in the hot seat today.
It might be better to start with somebody else. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds clear. So I think you're good to go, unless you got people around and you don't want them to hear your business.
There are some people here. I didn't really have that much to say about Linux, but my usual soapbox stuff about everything being smart these days. Like my neighbor who blasted me with LED lights, a lot of noise. Dropped his car key.
Huh.
This is for a car that's about 2004. And then, so he comes over and asks me if I've seen it, and searches around his house, for a couple of days. And then he finally goes and gets a locksmith, and he comes over and tells me about this. And I didn't know that keys for cars, actually, these keys are smart. They have batteries in them. I mean,
And they're expensive.
Yes, $300.
You would spend hundreds of dollars for a locksmith. He said he didn't have a spare key. So then I started looking at my 2003 car, and it's got batteries in the key too. A smart key, right? So it's wild to me. It just blows me away to make everything smart, so you can't use anything without making the electronics work, having batteries and so forth. So something useful about 30-year-old vehicles, maybe.
Yep.
You know, I've got one that doesn't work. So anyway, that's one of my soapboxes. The other thing was that everything, I mean, compared to years ago, everything, all this electronic stuff is so small too. Made out of plastic, breaks easily, and I just got into another remote control for a TV. I think it's got batteries, of course, and it's a real smart car too. But it has this really small ribbon cable in it that broke. It's about a half inch, a quarter of an inch wide, and about 2 inches long. It has 10 conductors in it. And it just seems wild to me to make something so cheap that it breaks so easily and so hard to work on because it's so small. Anyway, that's all for me right now. I may chime in a little more later. So I'll move on to the next person.
All right, thanks, Larry. Pete, what you got going on?
Nothing Linux-wise. A fight with my car key. I've got a 2018 Atlas. Doesn't have a real key. It's a little keyless fob thing.
Yeah.
And I come out of the Brother Wolf, and I go to get my doggy out of the back of the car to take him around the back for a peep, and the door is locked. The only door that's open is the driver's door, so I start pushing the unlock button on the key fob, and nothing's happening. And I said, oh man, I think my battery went dead. So I get in, I'm able to unlock it with the button inside the car, take the doggy for a walk, get back in. I'm able to get the back off the key fob. It takes a 2032. And I said, I got plenty of those at home. I'll wait till I get home to replace it. Head over to Aldi, leave the engine running, and go in, and the doggy's in the car with the air conditioning, and come back out, sit down in the driver's seat, and I noticed between the console and the driver's seat, the back of the key I had opened up. I went, oh, wait a minute, where is the key? No key in sight. The Volkswagen, it will run. if you've got it started and you get in somebody else's car and drive away, it'll tell you the key is no longer within range, but the engine will keep running.
Right.
But if you turn it off, that's it. You're out of luck. Oh my God. Maybe I dropped it when I took Dudley for a walk over at Further Wolf, driving back over there, can't find it. And, oh, well, I got a spare at home, so I can't shut off. I'll drive home. Get home, get in the garage, shut the car off, wait about 10 seconds, push the start button, and it starts up. I go, well, that means the key is in the car somewhere. I'm hunting everywhere, under the seats.
It's in the dog.
No, I never thought of that. You didn't need it.
Wait a few days.
Anyway, it had fallen down between the console and the seat, and I got a flashlight, and I'm looking, and I finally saw a little glint way in the back, almost in the back seat area. So I got it. I said, "This is crazy." So I did a little research online for these key finder thingamajiggers, and the two best that came up were Apple AirTag, which are expensive. They were about $50, and a thing called a Chipola One Spot. And it comes, the Apple AirTag does not have a little hole to put it on your key ring. You got to buy a $30 extra to and this was $25 and
$30 hole.
So I got two of them, and they work great. And the only thing they won't do that the AirTag does is it won't call your phone when you lose your phone. You got your key, but you can get a free app to put on your laptop or to do that. So I've been really happy. I really highly recommend it. It's Chipolo, CHIPOLO, One Spot. That's the newest one. And when it runs natively on your iPhone or your Android phone. It uses a built-in app on the iPhone. It takes about 2 seconds to get it installed, and I really like it. It gives you a map when you start it up. And I've got two, one for both cars. I don't know and it shows they're up on, they're with me, and they're up on top of my mountain.
It's like an alien.
Yeah. So anyway.
So Pete, what happens if you hit the emergency device, the emergency call button on your
phone? The phone?
Yeah. What happens? Does it activate that too?
I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't know if that's a good idea. All right. No. So anyway, that's car key finder thing. The other thing we've been fighting up here, yellow jackets. Evidently, this is the time of year. The yellow jackets are building their nests in the ground. We had one of the residents up here was walking her dog around the lake, walked right over her yellow jacket nest, got stung like 23 times, was able to make it to the little road that goes over the dam that forms the lake, collapsed on the road. One of the other residents happened to be down at the lake and saw her. One of the other residents up here is a nurse, and she had a EpiPen. They called her. She came down, gave her the EpiPen shot, called the 911, hauled her down the mountain, met the ambulance at the bottom of the mountain, hauled her off to the hospital. She had to get 2 more shots of that Epi stuff. And she didn't have to spend the night in the hospital, but she was hurting for over a day, over 24 hours. It was not a good scene. And a number of, I got bit twice mowing my grass. You've got these little holes in the grass, and they're under there, and you go over them with the mower, and the next thing you know, you're, So that's the other exciting thing. That's it for me.
The EpiPen probably saved the woman's life, actually.
That's what people have said. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know anything about them. Do they have a lifetime? We were thinking about buying one and just having it in a lockbox up here.
Yeah, they'll have an expiration, but the truth is that with adrenaline, for the most part, as long as it doesn't turn yellow,
It's
you might
good.
feel free to use it, especially if it's a question of that's what I have. The
Right.
other thing you could do, although most people won't do it, is because it's much cheaper than the EpiPen and the alternatives, except if your insurance covers it. So you say, what the heck? Is to get adrenaline ampules and basically 1 ml syringe and keep that together, and you can snap the one and do it.
Okay.
The problem sometimes, theoretically and in practice, rarely the EpiPen won't work. In other words, it's supposed to be automatic. You slap it
Right.
on your thigh, so you
Right.
don't have to figure out how to do it. But if it doesn't work, there is no built-in way to use it manually.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't like that. That's why you might get both if your insurance covers it. And then what
Right.
the heck, this didn't work in that rare case when I really need it. Then
Right.
you can do the other.
So what did you call it? Adrenaline capsule?
Ampules, the
Ampules.
little glass things.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I had very severe allergy to bees and especially yellow jackets. And I had to start taking desensitizing injections.
Wow.
Started out like twice a week and then went out to like once a month and
Did that
eventually
work?
like once every 6 months. Yeah, I did. And later on in life, I discovered that lo and behold, there was a study done that said that the injections of the type that I was taking would likely prevent arthritis
Huh.
in your later years. I have
Okay.
absolutely no arthritis symptoms. I'm
Okay.
69 years old, so that may have helped me there. But yeah, I did get stung later on in life, about age 50 something, I guess, and had no reaction whatsoever. So
Okay. Now, what about, because I got stung, I guess roughly a week ago, I was pulling weeds in my garden and got stung on my hand, and my hand swelled up to like twice as thick, and I
Ooh.
could hardly move my fingers, and it lasted about 24 hours. Does that mean I'm allergic to bees now?
Right.
I never
No,
used to be.
not
Oh,
really.
okay.
There's a distinction made between a local reaction, which can be very severe because
Oh,
of the toxin,
okay.
and a generalized reaction. So if you got stung in the hand
Yeah,
and your tongue swelled up,
that's not good.
then you need to see an allergist.
yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Great.
Or go to the emergency room
Yeah,
if you can't breathe, by the way. Don't
Yeah.
wait to see an allergist.
yeah. I was told, because a couple years ago now, maybe more than that, I had an anaphylactic reaction from a bee sting, and they basically said any time you have a reaction that is not local, it very well may mean that you're heading in a bad way. So you should seek a medical attention. I now carry this with me all the time, but I have been desensitized, and as a beekeeper, I do get stung
Oh,
often enough that I can sort of notice the difference. And yeah, I used to be the type where I would get stung and it would swell up pretty good and itch for a long time, and now it's just, I mean, it hurts. It always hurts, but that's pretty much it. It's like I don't notice the sting area,
huh.
you
Is
know,
that, is that
after.
because you've been stung so many times, do you think? Or
Well, it's because I've been desensitized. I
Yeah.
still go every 5 weeks to the allergist to get bee venom. And
Right.
yeah, at some point they say you will probably achieve sort of a lifetime desensitization. But as I am a beekeeper, it's best to just play it safe and just keep getting the shots, because it's just not
Wow.
that big of a pain to do.
Yep.
Also gets me down in South Asheville, and I'll go to a Bejas and have breakfast, and it's a good thing.
Oh, do you go to Allergy Partners in Arden then?
No, I go
No?
to Allergy Partners on what is
Julian
that?
Lane?
McDowell.
Okay, because if you're at a Beja, you're fairly close to the one in Arden. I go to the one in Arden. I'm on 5 years of venom immunotherapy because of one non-localized reaction, and it's such a nice place. I go once a month, and what the heck, I fit it into my schedule, so I might as well continue. At this point, as 80, I guess I might be considered immune for life because my life expectancy is not all that much longer.
That's
You know
a
what the
horrible
average life
thought.
expectancy is right now, Steve?
It varies. I mean, they say in general, they've said it dropped from 79 in the US to 76. But then if
Correct.
you subdivide it by ethnic group and such and whatever, and the actual age you're at, I mean, I can't go back and die at 76.
No.
That's the good news.
Not with that
Well, you-
attitude, anyway.
We could make that happen.
Oh, time travel.
Yeah.
Well, you're just going to make me younger. Oh, that's great.
I have bees too, and I've been stung, and I always have. I don't have any. I really don't have. Well, until recently, I didn't really have any allergies, but I recently developed about a year ago an allergy to naproxen, and it was a non-local reaction. I took like an Aleve, which I didn't take that often, and my eye swole shut. And being a scientist, I was like, does that happen every time? So I waited a month and
You did it
took
again.
another one, and it did it again. So I was like, well, okay, that's an allergic reaction.
Physician, heal thyself.
So,
Do you have any problem with other NSAIDs?
allegedly, when I was a kid, it was aspirin. I was always told, but I don't know that for sure. My mom was not the most reliable person, so I'm not sure if that's hearsay or what, or if that was just something they assumed because it ran in the family. But allegedly aspirin at one point, although it's never bothered me in adulthood. So
Yeah, there are what's said to be anaphylactoid reactions with NSAIDs
okay,
in general. So even it's kind of a worst case. If it's at least an allergy, it should be fairly specific. You could get by taking one of the other 15 NSAIDs without having a reaction. But if it's a general mechanism of NSAIDs, then you might have an issue with any NSAID.
it's I can take ibuprofen pretty fairly okay. I do have, unlike Dan there, I do have some inflammation and even in my late 30s here, and arthritis from years of abusing my hands, like when I was younger, working in auto shops and stuff like that. And so I don't take them that often, but sometimes I do something and it, or especially when the weather gets cold, my hands are just like stiff and flat, and I can't really bend them, so I'll take some then. But yeah, so I've been able to take ibuprofen, but yeah, it was just out of the blue. I was like, I had used that stuff for years, not maybe less than once a month or even less than once a month, but it just out of the blue I was like, oh, this is new. And so yeah,
The thing is it can be multi-causal and we don't understand. The other thing I would say, if it's still on the market, Tolectin or Tolmetin, one is the brand name, I would avoid.
Okay.
Really?
Steve,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of Flexeril?
Yeah.
Yeah, I code blue on Flexeril when I was a lieutenant in the Navy. Wound up on an operating table with a needle shoved down into my chest.
Ew.
Yeah. I took 4 doses of Flexeril because I was a marathoner at the time and I had leg pain that wouldn't go away. And so they gave me Flexeril. It made the pain go away. But it caused tachycardia reaction, which almost killed me.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, they say they're not sure if I died on the table or not, but I did code blue. They had to rush me into the OR. And yeah, so it wasn't a good experience.
No.
So that wasn't an allergy. I'll have to look this up now.
No.
We use that in the clinic. It's one of the things people come and say, I got muscle aches. So for muscle spasm, muscle pain, we might use that as one of the things symptomatically to help relieve it. I'll have to look up, what the side effects and in terms of tachycardia versus allergic reaction. That's interesting. Thanks for the info.
Yeah, well, they call it allergy in my health record.
They may call anything very severe that way. I'm just not clear whether the tachycardia was because you went into shock, which could be triggered by histamine release systemically, and then your heart was trying to keep up and pushing it because of the adrenaline release internally. But, again, if it caused a bizarre tachycardia that knocked you out and also caused basically a shock because it was going so fast,
Yeah, all I remember is I walked up to the nurses' table where there were a bunch of people, and all I remember saying is "help me," and I fell over the table and collapsed the table, and that's when the code blew me and put me on a
Lucky it
gurney.
wasn't Mission Hospital. You'd have to fill out the
No,
insurance form first.
this was a Navy facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm being nasty.
Yeah.
I apologize. Well, basically glad you survived and entered your second life.
yeah, right. Yeah, got a renewed life.
When are you going to take this needle out? Next question.
Yeah, right.
All right, I've lost my place. Like, who was last talking? Was that Pete?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Steve.
Okay, I have something more in the way of a simple question. Here's the background. As you know, I've said before, I'm trying to get a program, Pipewire, working on a no systemd distro, Antics. And so one of the questions, I'm starting from minimal installs. The developer actually came up with versions of the Pipewire packages that he says now are free of systemd dependencies. And so I'm getting the basic package minimalistic as possible so that I can add that in and see if it works. So one of the things I don't have is what called a seed or session management. Now I know that's one of the things pushed into systemd, but it used to exist apparently anyway. And in general, I understand it to be something that provides security that a person can authenticate that they're entitled to use a device like a laptop or whatever. So I'm just curious more about this. If anybody happens to have worked with this, perhaps somebody who's a system administrator, it's old hat. And I'm not sure whether I need to add a couple of programs that support seat management versus session management. So I'm just throwing that out there for people's comments, and then that's basically all. I'm finished. That was quick. Okay.
Enter and sign in, please.
So basically, you're not able to get the Pipewire session running because you're not running the systemd session manager thing. Whatever is the kind of the base problem there, I guess.
No. What I'm doing is I'm doing it in stepwise. We have Pipewire in a form that's actually usable is in the unstable.
Okay.
And I've started with for this purpose, I picked up a fresh stable, and I'm planning to convert it by switching repos to make it an unstable.
Okay.
My first step before doing that was to make sure I'm doing this with a live USB, and I wanted to make sure I could get it running X, which I just did yesterday. So it doesn't make too much sense to try it without running X. I can't imagine playing music because I always see that, I always see that in the context either of YouTube or VLC or something like that.
Right.
So anyway, that's my plan. And so I'm looking to see whether I need to add, we have something called seatd, which is a very simple seat daemon that's available. But I don't understand too well if I'm going to need it, and I'm not going to add something. I've got X running. So the question is whether I should bother with this, and there's a point to putting that in before I try to move to the unstable repos and then try to install the unstable version of Pipewire packages.
That is a good question. I do not know for sure there. Yeah, that's a good question. You're really bolting everything together there.
Oh yeah, but the basic question is to find out in generic terms, general primary terms, when you're using seat managers, when this is important to you, who is it important? Is it important for a system administrator who says, well, I've got 25 people on 60 machines, and I have to allow this person to use these 3 machines and that person to use that. So I've got to have seat management so that each person, I'm assuming, see, I have such a vague idea of what it's used for. That's what I'm trying to do. Clarify what is seat management, whether it's seat management, session management, but it's for authenticating users to enable them to use various devices. So I don't know if anybody, if that's a central issue for somebody who says, oh yeah, I work with this all the time and we have to set these up or else people can't log in. They can't do this. They can't do that.
Seat management, as I remember it, is like hardware provisioning kind of thing. Like who is able to use that hardware. In a system administrative world, we've been virtualized for so long that doesn't really matter anymore. Because people aren't using a desktop. Yeah, that's a good question. I would think you still need a seat manager on a desktop scenario, because you have to, even though you're the only user of the system, there's multiple users in that, you're going to have if you've got Apache installed or something else, or then there are multiple, as far as the system is concerned, there are multiple users, even if you're the only human one.
Right.
So I would
at
think,
least there's root. So
yeah,
that's always.
yeah. So any properly configured Linux distro is probably going to have some segmentation in terms of like, this program runs as this user, this program runs as this user. So I would think you would need one. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand I need to be a member of a group if the application only applies to people in that group.
Right.
And it might be the audio video group if that's the case. But what you're saying is, okay, so see, because I can log in and I can work with the laptop and I don't have any, as far as I know, a seat manager involved in that. I'm just not sure at what point, with what applications, if it's pure device management, and most of the people I'm thinking about who would use this would be single individuals using a personal laptop or a personal desktop.
Right.
I'm not sure that I need to futz with it. And if I don't need to futz with it, I don't want to futz with it.
Yeah, and this is this is one of those things that is, we haven't had to mess with in a decade or more, so I'm a little fuzzy on it. But I just remember it having to do with hardware things and the stuff. But yeah, anyway. So.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
I'm glad it's not an obvious huge thing so far, so I could, certainly try. The worst that happens is it's another failure, and I'll say, I learned from that. 5,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
They have these in Linux, we have these wonderful things called distributions, where somebody has already gone through and picked out the packages that work together to make a complete working system, and you install that, and then it works.
That's too easy. You're right. And this comes from Debian. It's Debian that provides most of the packages, and the non-systemd part is a relatively small part of it. So I do know that there are session managers and seat managers as packages available. I just am not sure at what point something won't work because I lack it. So I guess I'll just have to. I'll ask on the forum itself. There may be somebody that says, "Oh, I just went through this."
Yeah,
it may be more of an individual user who's had problems with it.
Avoiding systemd is becoming harder and harder because it's becoming a lot of things are just presupposing it's there. I know was it Debian without systemd? They're running into a lot of issues with porting packages and things over from Debian proper to there, because it's just a lot of programs expect it to be there these days, so it's getting harder and harder to avoid. Good, bad, or ugly. And Leonard Partering just got hired by Microsoft about a month ago. So anyway,
they felt he was a traitor. That was it. Microsoft was doing this with systemd to turn people off.
Figures.
But yeah, sorry I couldn't be more use there. I was trying to figure out what exactly. Yeah. Okay.
No, that's helpful, because if you told me no, it's a big problem and you're going to nothing is going to work. You try that, it's going to break. I would have felt relatively disheartened. But
All right.
thank you.
Yep.
I'm finitoed.
All right, thanks, Steve. I guess let's talk to Leander.
I'm here. Let's see. I've got the huge hornet's nest on the side of my house that is 40 feet in the air. Is not bothering anybody, thankfully, and there are about 500 hornets in it. So they can stay there till the first frost kills them out, and then I'll get up there and knock it down. See, been a rough year. We do have bees. It's been a rough year up here for the bees. All of the rain. We have been. These are some of the lightest hives I've ever seen going into the autumn. I mean, we've been having to feed them just to keep them alive over the summer, which is just the endless rain we've had here. They just haven't had the opportunity to really forage. Sadly, I don't know what you're seeing down there, Brent, on that, but
Very different, actually. Very.
Really?
We had a hard time not having additional bees. We're trying to keep it down to 2 hives, and we had swarms that just moved into equipment, and now we have 4 very strong hives.
We have we're down to one hive. We're down to one hive. We had one die out in the middle of summer. We just couldn't keep them fed fast enough. It's just been endless rain and humidity up here, and they just have been. The other hive is barely got any honey in it. I mean, we haven't taken any off.
How do you feed?
Right now, we're still doing the 1-to-1 sugar water, but I'm going to start here this month. I'm going to start switching to the 2-to-1, where it's 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. So
what kind of feeder though?
Hive top.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had the best success with feeding because in dearths, hive top generally can cause more problems with robbing.
Yeah.
So we've had the best luck with feeding in the front of the hive, because at least you gotta get past the guards to access that, or in like frame feeders, especially now that we've moved to the long Langstroth hives.
Okay.
They can't really take. I mean, I could cut a slot for a front feeder, but that's not really ideal. So yeah, we do the frame feeders.
Might get a frame feeder then. I was just the hive top seems to be the less prone to drown them, but yeah, it's just been. I have never struggled this much with bees in the summer. Granted, the month of July when I was basically knocked out with COVID, I probably didn't get to them as much as I should have. But when you're, I still kind of feel like I had some side effects from that. Like sometimes I'll get some like odd kind of exhaustion. I'm not sure if it's in my head or if it's actual, but or just having to go back in and commuting and stuff. But it could be all 3 anyway. But yeah, I'll drop in a frame feeder in there, see if we can limp these guys through the winter. I mean, I've just never. We live in the country, and there's usually so much green and wildflowers and flowering things out here in general that they
have to have opportunity to access it.
Yep, and it's just been so rainy. I need to look at my weather station, but we have packed on the rain this summer, and yeah. So I've been messing with that. Technology wise, been fussing with my Linux laptop. I have a Dell Precision 5470. Which is nice and shiny and has Alder Lake in it and everything. But I discovered an issue, and I wrote to some of my friends who work at Dell about it, and some other people picked up on it too, is that Intel, Intel used to be like the gold standard of Linux support, that's their graphics and everything. They have a new image processor for the webcam in this machine that doesn't work in Linux, the IPU6 image processor. And I wrote to them a few months ago. Dell's workaround is you have to run the Dell Ubuntu image, and they have a user space driver in that image, a closed source driver, but it runs in the user space, so it eats your CPU, and it reduces the camera quality to about 720 or 480p. Intel said they have no plans of releasing, because usually Intel is really good about putting their camera, their graphics, and all that hardware into the kernel. So they cannot do that with this for some reason. So they have no plans on releasing an open source driver for this camera. And in general, Alder Lake support in Linux has been pretty bad. It's been, they've removed all the sleep modes. They now use Microsoft Hybrid Sleep, so like the laptop just sits in my bag and gets warm. And so I'm really thinking next machine, if I don't get a Mac, will be AMD or something, because this is I talked to my Dell friends and they said that Intel actually a few years ago cut their open source coordinator guy and let him go. And they were thinking that this is just kind of it took a couple of years for that kind of to work through the product cycle. And so the system stuff. And so Intel's really not doing great with Linux support right now, I'm finding on this machine. And HDMI, so it's got Thunderbolt on both sides, USB-C, so you could do HDMI only works out of the left side port, and apparently that's a common issue that Intel hasn't put into the kernel. And so, yeah, I've just been really struggling with that, getting that to run. Of course, that only impacts the 1% of us here. It doesn't impact the 98% or whatever that uses Windows on this machine. But and to Dell's credit, if you do run their Ubuntu image, everything on the machine works. They have, put some closed source patches and drivers in there to get everything, but then you have to run Ubuntu, which I don't want to do. So, yeah, so that's been kind of my struggle with that here a little bit lately. I've been messing around with Kubernetes. I actually have a Pawigio install that I use for uploading my photos to, and the funny thing is that Pawigio install is older than Kubernetes. Kubernetes was released in like 2015. I set this up in like 2012 or something, but I'm actually migrating it to K8s, to a K8s cluster, just to have something to experiment with. And so that's been interesting, migrating that install over. I'm not sure where I sit with the whole containerization of everything. It definitely seems like a developer issue to a system administration question, or a developer solution to a system administration question. I can see the advantages of it, but man, the overhead and the complexity of it is a bit extreme, I think. So, but that's really all I've got for now. Just hoping this kind of exhaustion is just regular exhaustion and not COVID exhaustion. So
a couple of things, Leander. I have a brother-in-law who has long COVID, and his only real symptom is the exhaustion thing.
interesting.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, what have you got against Ubuntu?
Snapd.
Yeah.
It's part of it is very some of it is systemic. I don't like the way that they break off and do their own thing. Their what is that net plan that they have? Like, we have to use Ubuntu at work sometimes because of security things, and they having to set routes, having to deal with net plan over just the standard IP route stuff that everything else has is a pain. They have a history of like doing their own thing, burning resources, and then not contributing it back, which is irritating. They patched fractional scaling on GNOME for X11, but didn't contribute it back upstream. And part of it is skin deep. I just find it ugly. I don't know who decided on that sound theme, on that brown on brown on brown on brown color theme, like the 70s threw up on your computer. It's Fedora just looks better. I think default GNOME looks better. I think default KDE looks better and has a better feel to it. Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of business practices and not giving back to the community. Is to Fedora and Red Hat's credit, usually when they make something, they upstream it. They, everyone can benefit from it if they want to use it. Whereas Ubuntu and Canonical tends to be more like building their own little hut. So which I don't appreciate so much. And it's ugly. It's just it's just ugly. I mean, I don't know why. It's Anyway,
You have Mark Shuttleworth's email address?
I should.
All right, I think Rusty wanted to say something either in response to you or in general, and I was going to call him in next anyway. So, Rusty, what you got?
I don't see him.
Hello. I wanted to use my time to ask a couple of questions about managing the Jitsi conferences with our maybe 10 people. I'm having a lot of clipped syllables and sort of warbling interferences. And so I wanted to go around to ask if everyone can take note of their configuration. And I wanted to go around and ask everyone, if each person would respond, do you have clipped syllables and warbling cutouts and so forth? And is your microphone on right now, which is the most recent experience that I have? And then I have a special request to ask Dan, as he is live streaming or doing a recording, that means he has activated his record button to capture a live stream. Does Dan have his microphone on concurrently with doing the stream acquisition? I say that because I believe that Jitsi probably varies some depending on how many people have their microphones on. And I would think that the special relationship with the live stream recipient would make that microphone especially sensitive to, because that microphone feed must be included in the live stream. And so it's possible that very minute background sounds might interfere from any party. So I wanted to go around and ask each person, is your microphone on? Are you having any distortion and clipping?
Rusty.
And let me turn my microphone off just for a moment.
Okay. To answer your question about, my microphone is currently on, but my microphone being on or off has absolutely nothing to do with live streaming. My microphone's not required to live stream. The live stream is coming from the platform, which is the WNCLUG YouTube channel, siphoning through the Jitsi Meet platform. Okay. And I started up, yes, with my interface for Jitsi, but it's not dependent upon me. I could leave the room right now and the live stream would continue going. But I do not have or have not experienced any warbling or glitching or any sound problems or anything like that. But I will agree with you that reducing the amount of, of microphone usage, video usage, et cetera, does have an impact on the Jitsi platform itself. So if everybody turned their video off, for instance, and their microphones except the individual who was talking, that probably would be a better experience for everyone. But we don't do that. So I'll turn my mic off now.
Oh, okay. I'm back on. I think that the nature of most discourse is sort of that a group like this is sort of like a revolving panel discussion in which it takes two or more to tango. And so I think that maybe performance might improve if just the primary discussant plus whoever is most involved in a two-way or three-way conversation, if those mics are on, maybe we'll get a better throughput. I'm using Android cell phone, which generally has done well from Asheville, but I'm at a different location now, and I'm purposely not using low bandwidth because I thought low bandwidth would definitely give me distortion. Well, I had the same distortion on low bandwidth, so I went back to normal bandwidth. So anyway, I don't know the answer. I'm going to listen in to see if things improve since some microphones may go off now.
Rusty, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, if you're going around, I can say I'm having no problems. And I'm finished.
Okay, everything is clearer for me now. Will anyone else who has had problems, will that person speak up just so I know if anyone else has had a quality problem?
I think we'll call that a no.
Okay.
One thing I really do suggest that when folks aren't talking, they keep their mics off, especially if they don't use a headset, because it does cause some echoing, especially for certain folks for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't think it's a significant factor in throughput. Obviously, if you have the video displayed, that's going to cause a lot more contention for bandwidth downstream, at least, than anything else. But yeah, I don't think the rest of us have had significant issues with audio. Everything has been 100% for me.
Okay. I am getting things somewhat more clear now for voice. I'm not using video, and so maybe it's just me or just my situation, and it seems to have helped a little bit to, if some microphones have gone off, I think it's helped some. Um, I will, to wrap up my turn at the talking stick. I really don't have any significant experience over the past month. I'm just struggling with TurboTax to get. I'm struggling to prepare for the TurboTax experience, which is necessarily a Windows experience, and I have nothing else to add to that. Oh, that's extension to October 15th, so I've got to get on the stick. So that's me. Thanks. I'll turn my mic off.
Thanks, Rusty. Dan, did you have something to say in response? And you're muted. You're still talking on mute, Dan.
That's why I don't turn my mic off. Yeah, I was going to tell Rusty that I belong to another group as well as this one. It's a UCLUG, and when they meet, it's a requirement that everyone turn off their video and their mics when a presentation is being given because of the Jitsi issues that were being experienced. They're meeting live right now, and they're streaming from their live location so that people who can't come or are unable to come can access their meetings. But that's a requirement. I mean, it's not a would you do it? It's a requirement. So if the guy who's moderating that particular platform, if he sees you with your video on or with your mic on, he'll ask you to turn it off. Both of them when the presentation is given. When they go around the room, though, they don't. They kind of relax that. If that gives you any help there, Rusty.
Yeah, I will say my quality is up. It's definitely up. So that has helped. So thanks.
All right, Dan, what else you got going on?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have a lot to this month either. Linux wise, there's only one thing Linux wise that I can recall that I was working with. Not sure if folks have heard of this command. And by the way, we may go off of live stream in about 3 minutes. And that's a command called ipcalc. Leander may be more familiar with it. But ipcalc is a command that if you run in the terminal will actually show you how to subnet your network. And I don't know, Brett, do you use it in your organization or?
I'm certainly familiar with it. I think I may have addressed it on my networking presentation a while back.
Oh,
I
were
don't
you? Okay.
recall.
I didn't
Um,
remember.
yeah, I mean, subnetting is I mean, I kind of subnet in my head because of, I mean, it's networking is a big part of what I do.
Right.
So I don't, you say /27 to me, like it's all pretty much automatic. But yeah, it's definitely a good tool, and it's definitely a good learning tool.
Yeah. And I started looking at it and was considering subnetting my home network for various reasons. And one for device management, really. And so the ipcalc was to me a very valuable tool that I was looking at to use. That's the only really thing that I've done in Linux since last meeting. However, I am deep into a video that I found on the web. It's a 9-hour straight video done by a professional presenter. This lady, her first name is Rains. I can't remember the last name; it's escaped me. But she is an instructor, and she's also a professional website designer. Owns a company that does that. I currently host 2 of my websites using WordPress, and I have been involved with another platform in the past, WordPress being a content management system. And this particular platform is far superior to WordPress, especially in the area of security and also in the area of being able to separate your design into what's referred to as blocks. And that's called Drupal. I don't know if anybody else has been familiar with, heard of Drupal or had any, work with Drupal at all, any past experience. But so I've learned Drupal in the past when I had WordPress up and running, and I learned Joomla as an intermediary, and then went to Drupal. But it's been a while, so I thought I would refresh my memory of Drupal. And my plan is to migrate my WordPress website to a Drupal website. Um, but Drupal is this particular video, 9 hours, is absolutely the best video I've ever seen, bar none, on YouTube for presenting training in a particular technology. And and I could put the link out on our group. But anyway, I'm about 5.5 hours into a 9-hour video. I've already refreshed my memory to the point where I could probably build a Drupal website with no problem, but there's still a lot to go, apparently. And so that's the only other thing I've really been involved in, technology-wise, that I can remember at this point. So I don't have anything else.
I was actually the one of the admins of our Drupal install at ASU a number of years ago before I moved departments. And we wrote, it was before Drush was really a thing. Drush is the way to manage a Drupal install now. And so we had come up with a bunch of shell scripts to do it. And things like that. Nowadays, I think since I've left, they've migrated our Drupal to a hosted Drupal solution. So we don't host it on campus anymore, so we don't have to deal with any of the back end stuff. I used to run Drupal on my personal website, but I switched to a static site generator years ago. Pelican, there's a number of them out there. Hugo, I think, is more popular these days, but just for not having to deal with it. But Drupal is definitely more of, I would consider it more of almost like a framework for building a web app than a CMS. WordPress is like, if you just want to blog, that's what it does. Drupal is definitely more of like, and it started to go that way when I was using it. It's definitely more of like a framework for building any number of things. It is a lot more complicated, but yeah. So I've probably a lot of experience with Drupal, but not anything terribly recent. So
right, I think the Drupal is now up to version 10 in beta, and I believe I'm running beta. I'm running the version 9 actually. what I did was in the training aspect, is I installed Drupal as a virtual box appliance. It's a Bitnami lamp stack, and it's really good because you don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get it all set up, and you just open up the appliance and go log into it. So, and it's available out on the web at a particular web address, IP address. And the thing of it too with Drupal is, I believe a few years, probably less than 5 years ago, I believe most of the departments within the U.S. government mandated, because they were all running WordPress, they mandated like Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Agriculture, the White House, et cetera, they mandated that all those sites would be migrated to Drupal for security. That was around the time when there was a lot of terrorist activity.
Yeah,
And
WordPress has never been terribly good at security. It was a
no,
mess 11 years ago when I was doing CMS management. The last big project I was involved in was we were migrating to Drupal 6.
6, okay.
So that's how long ago I was really doing it. So
I think that's when I started learning Drupal
yeah.
6. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty powerful. Like I said, these days for my own website and stuff, I do have a Pewigio instance just because it interfaces with Darktable, and I can just like click a button in Darktable and upload to Pewigio.
Mhm.
But if you're just doing a personal website, I love static site generators. Pelican, Hugo, write your own. You just type out your stuff in Markdown, run the generator, it applies a theme, and you've got static HTML. You can put JavaScript in it. Like on mine, I've got a color box, light box. So when you click an image, it does the blows it up in the window thing.
Yeah.
But I've got that all hosted locally, and that for a personal website, or for really any number of websites, that's what we were kind of doing. We had moved Drupal to, we had our Drupal machines behind a Varnish cache, and so we had Drupal generate out the HTML, and then we cached it to static files in Varnish and served it out of there. It's just so much faster. Your public facing stuff is just static HTML, not a lot of security risks there.
Right.
So if you're doing it, I would say if you're doing it, if you want to serve a website, I would look at something like that where your Drupal install isn't actually exposed to the world. There's a way you can get into it to add content, but then when I go to I forget your website. I'm gonna blame COVID. Network.
You talking about mine?
Yeah, like if I go to your Dan Network.
Datapioneer-network.org.
Yeah, that's it. I was gonna say Dan-network, but datapioneer.network. .com, I just get the Varnish cache that's static HTML, and
okay.
that way the bad guys don't have a dynamic PHP app to really futz with to fuzz. But that would be something once you get used to installing and using it, I would take a look at it. It's pretty powerful for that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, sorry, I'm going off the rails here. This is my professional expertise. Well, it was.
I'm glad that you mentioned Drush because I'm looking into Drush with Drupal as well. But if you want to get an example, want to see an example rather of a Drupal site, standard Drupal site, what it looks like and what you can do with a content management framework, go up to theeconomist.com. It's economist.com, and it's called the Economist website, and it's a prime example of what you can do with Drupal. It's really nice. What I like about Drupal foremost is the fact that how you can control views and how you can control access permissions to blocks so that one site visitor, if it's not authenticated site visitor, doesn't see things that a authenticated site visitor sees necessarily. And you can control it by permissions, by IP address, by top level domain. It's really amazing what you can do with it. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, I think I'm going to break with tradition and just do my own thing now because I have a lot to respond to. So we do use Drupal actually in my work. In fact, that is sort of the big Linux presence as far as like our production stuff is our websites, both for internal and external consumption. run on Drupal with Varnish. And it's one thing, since I am kind of the only Linux guy, we have external partners that do all the Drupal work. And I also insist that they do all the Linux work because, again, I can't have Linux given. For one, I'm not on the systems team, so I can't have systems administration fall on my shoulder since I'm supposed to be on the security team. And even when that wasn't the case, when I was a network guy, I was insistent that the external parties managed the Drupal servers from the server up. And so far that has worked out quite well. One throat to choke, so to speak, when it comes to those machines. They have kept them updated. One thing I always fear when I go on them that they'll be a mess, but nope, they have been consistent about keeping them updated. So I've been pretty happy with the way those have been run. That being said, we're starting to move away from that a little bit, and unfortunately we're moving our public websites to something more along the lines of like a WordPress site, but it won't be on my network. So I mean, if it gets hacked, it'll suck, but it also won't be, there's not going to be any hooks to give them access to anything. It would just be the ability to munge content and otherwise group right now, but
Live streaming is on.
But this has come up in the past, automation for B stuff. And this is something I never did and I'm going to never do. And I was going to offer it to Leander if he has any interest whatsoever. This is something called HiveTool, hivetool.org if you want to go check it out. And it's a Raspberry Pi interface for monitoring hives, and it sort of is set up to upload directly to hivetool.org, but you can keep it all local if you want, because it's all open source. And so this is the interface, and it basically just has the ability to connect all the monitors and so forth. And what those are the ability to weigh the hive. So I have the gauges here to basically create a rudimentary scale. And then I have the ability to monitor temperature and humidity as well. So you basically can keep tabs on a hive throughout the year with a wireless or wired or however you want to do it on your Raspberry Pi. So one thing to note is the hivetool.org site itself has had some security problems in the past. I mean, I don't see how that's really a big deal for the end user, because you're just going to be reporting up to it. But like I said, that doesn't have to be done that way anyway. So if you, as a beekeeper who is technically inclined, if you have any interest, I have no plans to do anything with this. But, if you do, Leander, or if anyone else, wants to get into beekeeping and do that, then just like I said, it's up for grabs. Obviously, when we had our in-person meetings, it was much easier to deal with this, but just let me know.
I think this is the thing run by our CS department up here. This looks familiar. Is it Dr. Wilkes and Tasha Corey? Does that sound familiar?
No, the guy who has run I'm not saying there aren't other people involved with it, but the Center for Honeybee Research is in Asheville, and the name of the guy escapes me, but it's really just one guy who's heavily involved in it.
Okay.
This
looks, I'm looking at it now, it looks exactly like they got a bunch of grants here to write some software and do machine learning for the bee counting. Both of the heads of the CS department here are big bee people, and this looks a lot like their software. So I don't know if they might be involved with it some other way. I forget their name, but what they're calling their code. But one of my graduate kids, she said she spent a whole summer research internship just sitting in front of a computer identifying bees for a machine learning data set. So Yeah, this looks a lot like it.
Yeah. Carl Chezik, I think, is the guy down here. Since I just Googled that. But yeah, I mean, it obviously it doesn't have the hardware doesn't have to tie into any given thing. But you know, I went as far as buying the feet, but again, I never decided to build this because you kind of got to build a stand to plop the hive on, and figure out how to house the Pi and how to connect it. And I when it comes down to it, I mean, I'm kind of a Luddite when it comes to my agricultural endeavors. I don't really want to combine the hobbies necessarily. And you know, while the data is interesting, again, it's just not something I really feel compelled to do. And my involvement in the bees has my wife has sort of compelled me to be less involved with the bees since I got stung and had a reaction. So, yeah, and you know, it's not compatible with my new long Langstroth hives anyway. So what else have we been talking about? Oh, I wanted to have another look at your mug. Something about, did you have like a Quarks mug, Leander? Nice.
Yeah, it was my wife actually made this for me. It was the episode where like Quark reprogrammed all the replicators to like advertise for him.
Oh yeah.
It's that mug, yeah. So but yeah, that's a Quarks mug. So yeah.
So again, not a lot going on with the Linux hobby. I'll probably be upgrading to Mint 21 on all my devices before too long. But you know, not spending a lot of time on my Linux box because, you know, again, I'm kind of stuck on a Windows workstation that's provided for me for when I'm working, and then when I stop working, I generally leave the room and don't come back. Work has largely been VPNs for me for the past couple months. We upgraded our security gateway last year. I say we, it's really me. And now we're getting to the point where we're doing all the B2B and client VPN, which all the technical hurdles have been done, and it's just a matter of contacting each remote, you know, party and saying, hey, let's do this, sort of upgrading the security. So, and we've done everything to the nines because we've moved from sort of the old way of doing VPNs where it's like, okay, what are your IPs? What are my IPs? Let everything talk to everything. We trust each other to everything is done per port, per application, with deeper application inspection and, you know, moving everything from IKE v1 to IKE v2. And it's just, it's a substantial improvement for each of these VPNs we've migrated. So it's been a good project, and there's been a lot of discovering of hosts that are no longer, you know, needed on the VPN, or entire VPNs that were just vestigial, and just had to be gotten rid of. So it's good cleanup, and it's you know, high time we went through and did all this work. So it's fun to do. Yeah, the other thing is I'm reminded that I brought up last time my KVM works great for Linux, but swapping back to Windows, like maybe one time out of 20, it just hangs and I have to reboot my Windows machine. And I thought that maybe it was something I could solve with a USB hub, because someone out there suggested it might be the fact that I'm using a USB 2 device on a USB 3 port, and that might throw Windows for a loop. I wanted to try to solve that with a USB hub connected to the Windows port, since there are no USB 2 ports on this machine, and no ability in the BIOS, as far as I can tell, to downgrade them to USB 2. So I'm going to try that, since I clearly haven't done so in the last month, I think I'm just going to go ahead and buy a cheap USB 2-port USB hub if I can find one. So I think that's it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and see what Alan's got going on.
Well, first of all, I've been using Drupal for over 10 years in a production website, and I really like it, but it does have a little bit of a learning curve, and I'm currently running Drupal 9 dot something, and in order to install Drush, which is like a command line application to install Drupal modules or update versions, it uses an application called Composer, which is a PHP management application. Works great. I mean, it's like you push a button and it just updates everything. But in order to install Drush, you have to have a certain version of Composer, and then you have to have certain dependencies in terms of the version number of PHP that your server is running. So it's a little complicated, but worth the effort. Anybody has any Drupal questions, I'm more than happy to try to share what I know. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
What?
Since you're a long-time Drupal user, do you have any experience with managing migrations from like WordPress to Drupal?
No, I've never done a migration. I've migrated from one version of Drupal to another, but right. Never cross platforms.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, if I can't migrate from WordPress, figure out how to do that to Drupal, then I'm looking at reinventing the wheel once I get my Drupal site up and running. But I'm going to look into Drush and to Composer because that's too. Well, I've heard of both, but I really haven't looked into them. But I appreciate you.
Well, when you go to Drupal.org and you go to download a new version, or any modules or themes that you want to add to Drupal.
Right.
They offer two ways to install. You can either do it manually by downloading the like a tar or a zip file.
Correct.
And then manually installing it on your server.
Right.
Or they offer these same modules and themes and other versions in Composer files. And that's certainly much easier, and the recommended way of installing Drupal is through Composer. And then once you get all that done, you can use Drush to manage, but you're going to go through a little bit of a learning curve to get everything working the way you want it to.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, in terms of what I've been doing with computers and networking, my internet service provider, which is a fiber to the home network that's worked wonderfully for the last 6 years since their inception, the company was sold, and the company that bought the network took over on August 1st. And I will tell you that midnight of the 1st is when the problem started. They migrated their network management to their existing network that manages their other cable systems. And what happened was that new networking protocol uses something called carrier grade NATing, and which it's also called large scale NATing is the other. You can look it up on Wikipedia or on the internet. Basically what they're doing is they are assigning dynamic IP addresses to their client systems. And so it's like you took a router that does network address translation locally on just in your home or your office. They're doing the same thing, except for on a network-wide basis. So instead of assigning routable IP4 addresses, which is what we had before, they're now assigning private network addresses. It's kind of like double natting. And the impact on me is I used to be able to remotely access my devices over an IP4 address. And with this new network topology that they're using, I can no longer do that. All the outward bound connections work fine. So, I mean, browsing the web or serving FTP or whatever outbound works just fine. But I cannot go remotely and talk to those devices and configure them. So the solution to this has, there's a couple of possible solutions. One solution is to order a static IP address, which I've done, and it's an extra few dollars, $10 a month, but they haven't been able to successfully provision that static IP address that works. The other solution is to use a VPN, which will definitely work, but it involves installing client credentials to all the other people that I need to have access to these network devices. And I've looked at Nord VPN. They have something called their MeshNet on Nord that allows one device to talk to another device, through the VPN. So if anybody has an experience with Nord or any other VPN provider that allows subnetting access, I'd be interested in hearing about that. And other than that, that's pretty much what I've been up to. I watched and I went into a T-Mobile store and talked to them about their T-Mobile data networks. T-Mobile is merged with Sprint, and they've expanded their coverage. And they offer pretty fast 5G service in a wide coverage area, and not everywhere. But anyway, it's an unlimited data plan, and you can try the network out. So anyway, they told me about this T-Mobile Spacex presentation by Elon Musk and the chairman of T-Mobile. It's on YouTube. I can share the link if you want. Basically, Elon Musk, they're using the SpaceX, the StarNet network. And with this, you can text any smartphone in the world over their network for free. So you can be out in the middle of the outback in Australia, or you can be out on the Serengeti in Africa or in Antarctica, anywhere in the world. You can now text using their network, or you soon will be able to, I should say. But anyway, and it's free. It's fairly low bandwidth, so you're not going to be able to do video or any data intensive networking. But I can share that link on the chat if you all want to watch their press release, their video launch. Anyway, that's basically what I've been up to. Just struggling, trying to get access to my remote devices, which are cameras, my weather station, my Raspberry Pi devices remotely, and pain in the neck.
Yeah, I feel you there. When we went to the fiber optic internet through our electric co-op, I mean, obviously it was far better than what we had, but I don't have a public IP to myself. So trying to do things like host game servers for the kids, which of course they're, grown now and they can figure out their own technical solutions. But there's things obviously, you can't do. There's VPNs are obviously the solution for talking to um, people and who's you have the ability to cooperate very directly with, but trying to do things on a more public scale, obviously you're kind of then pushed out to the cloud to figure out how to uh, get connectivity back to things.
So, yeah, carrier grade NAT is coming for us all. It's well, I still have a public IP address. Fortunately, my ISP is not been bought out yet. I'm sure it's going to happen. It's a small local co-op. But yeah, the mesh network VPN. I would personally run it. That's what I do at work is VPNs a lot now. I would probably fire up a Linode and set up OpenVPN. My personal, kind of, I call it the dummy VPN, the one that just goes. I like Molvad over Nord because Molvad has a better track record of not logging. Like they run all of their servers in memory; they can't log. Nord got bought out by a bigger company that I'm pretty sure is just the CIA operating under a different name. So actually, that's tinfoil hat aside. There's been a lot of VPN companies that have got bought up by a couple of big kind of conglomerate things, and there's a lot of speculation as to what's going on there. So be careful. Molvad has not. And Molvad offers the mesh network stuff. For your weather station, I have the same thing here. You can't see it, but I've got a Davis Vantage Pro hooked to my Linux server here. What I do is WView, or excuse me, WeWX now has
That's what I use.
Yep, it has the ability to rsync to a public server. So I actually bought the domain a number of years ago. This toddncweather.org, and I just have it. I have a local copy here on my Linux server, so I can just go there on my local network and get my local server. So it's always, so if the internet's down, I always have it. But then I have WeWX rsync to a web server that the rest of the world can get to for public stuff. So that might be a solution for your weather station, at least, is a little.
Andrew, that's exactly how I do things. I've got a Davis Vantage Pro weather station.
Yep.
And it's connected up through that special cable that they sell to a Raspberry Pi single board computer.
Sure.
That's running the WeWix software. Works great. It basically FTPs or rsyncs that weather data every 5 minutes up to my web server.
Right.
So that's working great.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I have DNS in the house to where I can, like, if I type this address in from a computer that's on my network, it gets to my local server, or if I'm off the network, it goes to the public server. So you can look at kind of tweaking that to make it, that's really to make it more friendly to like my wife and stuff. Where it's not like, well, if you're at home, you need to go here, but if you're out in public, you can just type in one thing and depending, it'll figure it out. The migration to Drupal thing, that is a long-standing problem. When we started the Drupal project at ASU, I was still a student, and we different departments were using different CMSs, different websites all over the place, and this was a movement or a project to standardize everyone on one. It was kind of our first corporate IT moment, I'd call it, to standardize the whole university on Drupal. And we actually ended up hiring 2 full-time staff members whose whole job was to migrate content. We looked at so many automated solutions. We tried scripting it. granted, we were looking at WordPress, we were looking at all kinds of other static sites people had set up over the years. So yeah, that is not. I'm sorry, Dan and Alan. That is not a new problem or one that has been easily. You would think it had been easily solved. I would think by now, but that's. I remember those pains distinctly from about a decade ago. So, our answer, being the government, was just to hire 2 people. It's just like, okay, your job is to copy and paste text and move images and make sure it looks good and it's formatted correctly and all this stuff. And I mean, if you're on the side of, hey, you're giving 2 people jobs, it sounds good. So they ended up moving on in the university, but later. But that was our solution to it. So,
well, Leander, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was looking for a scripting solution. So
there may be something out there now, and you probably don't have the same problem we did, where you've got a single install of WordPress. You don't have 500 installs of WordPress or at different versions and all this other static.
I've got 2 sites supported on one install.
Yeah. So it'd probably be simpler for you, but I feel like that's a problem. That's been a problem, but yeah. The carrier grade NAT stuff. Look at Mulvad. Like I said, I run my own OpenVPN instance on a Linode. I still have a public IP address, so I actually have a VPN set up at home. So when I'm out road warrior configuration, my laptop can VPN back into my house. Like I said, I'm sure carrier grade NAT's coming for us all, though, unfortunately. Which saddens me, but from a security,
let me explain. I forgot to mention why they're going to carrier grade NAT, and the reason is to conserve IP4 addresses, which there is a finite number of IP4 addresses available. So it's a cost savings measure on they're basically sharing up to 128 clients can share that same IP4 address. So that's why they're doing it. And
we do the same thing at ASU. I set up, actually I continued Kevin's project too. I've just moved it to Linux and modernized it. We NAT the whole student population behind 200 IP addresses or something like that. We do the same thing. And it's for the same reason, IPv4 exhaustion. But it also has security benefits. I mean, if I'm an ISP and it means that Joe, average user, can't open a port on a router and then put an out-of-date box on my network to get beat up and spam and do all that stuff. Yeah. So it's got some security side effects too. It sucks for us more technical people. Brent mentioned game servers. That's not a problem these days. There's not a game anymore that allows you to run a server. They're so locked down. You have to rent a server from the company. And plus it makes them more money, and they can decide when the game is over and you have to buy the new, if you're using, game version 1 and then they release, game version 2, you have to then buy game version 2 to keep playing. So there's game servers are not hardly a problem anymore. No one hosts locally. So it's I don't like it as a technical user, but it solves a lot of problems from the ISP side. So
why is there's so much resistance for going to IPv6 rather than NATing? I don't understand that.
Well, I can talk to that a little bit. We in the United States, we have a glut of IPv4. Like at the hospital I work at, we have 3 IPv4 allocated to us from Lumen, CenturyLink, Quest, whoever. We've been around for a while, and we only use a small fraction of that. By and large, because of NAT, we can get by with. And as stuff moves to the cloud, we're using less and less really of what we have, but we have so much. So that really the United States doesn't need to move to IPv6 because we've allocated for ourselves so much of the IPv4. and even as devices grow, NAT serves the purpose for most of those. Like your Internet of Things don't need to have public IP addresses. They're all behind something.
Right.
Where it's really a problem is in the developing world, emerging markets, and so forth. And they're squeezed, but there's enough inaction. Like we've sort of, in the networking team at the hospital, we've said, okay, this is sort of our thought for IPv6, but I mean, so many things don't work with IPv6. So it's like, we're not going to migrate the entire network to it. And there's not like a reason for our websites to be out there on the public IPv6 network. So that there's just so much reason for inaction in certain places, while there is reasons for certain markets to be more aggressive with it. It's just that most of us don't care.
Well,
I
Brent,
don't. I still don't care.
Why is it that IPv6? What things are you talking about that don't work? Because I mean, IPv6 even offers encryption enhanced.
I'm speaking like in a hospital environment, just devices that just don't work with IPv6. Just no one has. There's no profit in making them work, or they're just so old. And because we deal with things that are 20 years old in healthcare, because they just stick around. It's just inaction, and no real global like push for it. Like you hear all the time, it's always like 5 years around the corner. We've been talking about how IPv6 is coming, and we're going to have to deal with it for years and years and years. But it will eventually be the thing. But there's just so much cost in getting things moved over, and behind the firewall, like why would I make my network more complex, right? There are some real benefits to IPv6. It's smarter in a lot of ways, but it's not, my IPv4 network just isn't broken enough that I'm really going to ever want to engage upon a project to move the internal network at least to IPv6. If I were building something new, especially if I didn't have the constraints of older devices, older, whatever, yeah, I would probably go all IPv6, but that's almost never the case. You're almost always going to have legacy to deal with.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of the consideration for IPv6 aware hardware.
And let's pivot back to this discussion, but I'm going to feel really bad if we don't get to Gene. So, Gene,
Right.
What you got going on?
You're muted.
Yeah, here we go. Let's see. Well, I want to circle some of those things we've already circled. Pete was talking about having the key locator or whatever, and my thought for that was the way to solve having too much tech is to have more tech, right? So, just a question, something to think about. And then one of the things that pisses me off with the new Ubuntu, which I'm in love with, even though Leander is not, and I don't use the regular flavor Ubuntu. I use X Ubuntu. So I don't deal with the puke brown stuff. It's my stuff is all blue and kind of not too bad. It's not ugly. But one of the things that pisses me off is that now Firefox is Snap. It's the only real thing that I've run into that's Snap, and I've never really enjoyed Snap all that much. I don't know whether it's the in the initial iteration of Snap, I resented the fact that it was throwing up a virtual thing on a virtual drive in my operating system without telling me anything about it. You know, it was just sort of there. So I had played around with it a little bit, but then I got rid of it because of that. But now it's back in the form of the Firefox that comes with Ubuntu, at least, and I don't have any familiarity with the other flavors, is a snap package. And I don't notice too much different with it, but you have to update it, or it updates separately. And one of the, as Brent mentioned several months ago, one of the great things about a Linux OS versus Windows is that all of your updates come through the same thing. You don't have to go out and get a separate update as you might for Windows and some more obscure software, something like that. But the snap update, there's a pop-up that comes up and says, your snap needs to be updated. You have 13 days, shut the program down, and it'll update it. Well, it doesn't. So you have to go in and do a refresh on the snap, and I do it in terminal. And it's just a minor pain in the ass, but I can see that as they incorporate more snap packages into the OS, it might. And I don't know that they have plans to do that, but I suspect they do. It seems like the way we're being pushed is to have everything containerized. And there again, theoretically, not a bad idea. Having a sandbox to play in for every little program is not a horrible idea, but it needs to be more a little more thought out and a little less. The only other option you have with Firefox is to use a package. You can opt out of the snap, but then you're using a package that doesn't get the full security and all that Firefox that you want out of Firefox. So you're kind of it's like, okay, if you want to drive an old clunker, you can do it, but it's still going to be an old clunker. It's not going to be the best current edition. Anyway, so partly that was my soapbox. And then the other thing is I self-inflicted injury wise, and going to the rain thing, I was playing around outside with my laptop on the patio, and one of those dark clouds came whistling over, and I said, oh, this is not going to be anything. So I got up to do something. Anyway, I forgot that I'd left the laptop sitting on the table out on the patio, and the dark cloud turned out to be something. So I got my laptop rained on, and I said, oh gosh, I've probably fried it and all that. Luckily, I had turned it off. A lot of times I just suspend. So I think if it would have been in suspend, I would have probably lost it. But I let it sit for several days, took the back off, blew some compressed air through it as much as possible, and lo and behold, it fired back up after a week or so of being out of commission. But then I did somehow, and I guess it probably was self-inflicted as well, I boogered up the grub or something. So rather than going back, I did try a couple of things, but rather than going back and doing a full-on troubleshoot with it. I just decided I would go in, get a backup, a current, that current day's backup, and reinstall the system. So I did that, and everything came back, and that's what I'm on right now. And actually, the good thing is that I must have blown some cobwebs out, because it seems to be running a little bit cooler. So there must have been some dust bunnies hanging around in there that were keeping it warmer. Anyway, so that's my sad tale of woe. I don't have enough to do, so I have to invent these snafus to force myself to have something to occupy my time.
Yeah. Gene, I got a
Yes, sir.
comment to make about your snap. I have read somewhere, and I can't recall exactly where, but it appears that the future rather, of Snap may be grim. And because a lot of people are complaining about Snap being very slow, very sluggish in applications that run in Snap starting up. Firefox probably starts up a lot slower for you than it would if it were
I haven't
installed.
noticed any slowdown at all, but there again, that is the only Snap package that I use, and I don't know if clustering, if you really went whole hog into Snap, if clustering them might slow it down. But I've not noticed any real.
I used to be a proponent of Snap until I started installing more and more applications. My Snap list started getting longer and longer, and then I noticed that Snap packages weren't firing up as fast as I would prefer that they fire up. So, what I've been doing is, if something comes in a Snap, but if it also comes in a Flatpak or an app image or something like that, I'll jump on the app image or the Flatpak or the Docker or something before I invoke a Snap, for the most part. So I'm kind of hoping it goes away, to be honest.
Well, I don't know the mechanics of it, and I'm sure there are people who could speak to it much better than me. But I do like the idea. So it is. I mean, it is probably an idea that, but the implementation may be better done by, like you say, App Image or Flatpak or one of those guys. Somebody may innovate past what Snap has done. And I do think that that the Linux framework, and that's one of the great things about Fedora, is the innovation. It does, you've got to innovate, and you've got to try these things, even if you see that they're not 100% perfected. So, I don't mind using something that's not perfect.
Well, you made a comment about Snap you liked it because, at least I inferred that you liked it because of the sandboxing that it does. You can get a much better experience with sandboxing if you go with CubesOS than if you run Linux with Snap. So, you might want to investigate CubesOS as well, because it's very sandboxed.
Well, I say I'm not really out shopping for another OS or anything.
Right.
I mean, I like the OS I've got. So. I think people are having their hand up, Brent. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, that was me. I had launched something else that was making noise in the background. I thought somebody was.
Yeah, I was also trying to talk to Gene. Simplistically, I have sudo apt upgrade, which gives me frequent upgrades of Firefox. But you prefer to use Snap, and I'm not clear on what you see as the advantage.
I don't prefer. It is what's offered through Ubuntu. It's the package that comes with the distro.
Oh, so there's no mechanism because it's a Debian distro. So I figured you're using.
Well, there's always workarounds, but the one that comes with Ubuntu is a Snap package.
Okay.
So, I could work around. I could go back, as I said, I could go back to to the other Firefox where it's part of part of the other packages, but I don't really want to. I mean, I want the Snap thing to work. It's just that the minor inconvenience of having to refresh that one package out of all my Linux packages. The rest of them upgrade or update with the when the updates are piped out, usually Thursday or Friday. So you get the update then, and it's all the whole system's updated. But this one Snap thing is not. So
By the way,
that's all I was bitching about.
Gene, by the way, did you know that you realize that there's now a rolling release of Ubuntu out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried one of those rolling releases several years ago and was not happy with it. Things get too easily broken.
I'm running LMXE, which is based on MX21. It's a rolling release, and I'm not having any issues with it. Actually,
yeah, I think I had Manjaro, and seemed like every other thing that came through would break a piece of the system, and you either had to go in and get up to your elbows in the workarounds or whatever. So,
yeah.
Anyway, just my experience, and there again, I'm getting too old to go chasing new stuff.
That's what keeps you young, though.
Yeah, keeps your mind
Yeah,
sharp.
look at. I mean, you're our bright and shining light, Steve.
Steve, I got something for you. You were mentioning sudo apt install. Have you heard of Nala?
Yes. And I think I wrote a comment to you on the email that one of the people had commented on antics. I'm sorry, Gene. I didn't want to.
Oh no, that's me. I'm done.
And I know Leander had a comment, so I think because he's still got his hand up.
Yeah, I do, but you can go ahead and I'll do it.
Oh, okay. It's just that now it handled preferences differently, and I wanted to make sure by default apt handles preferences. They'll only install automatically actual things that are labeled depends, not recommends and suggests and such. And Nala apparently handles things somewhat differently, and that's system and the differences between the various levels is so complex that that gave me a feeling I should stay away from it unless I heard that there was a real clear way of doing it, so you could customize it and be absolutely sure it was as strict as least as apt. But again, I'm a newbie, so
I've used it now for a month or 2 months, probably haven't had any issues with it. So
great.
That was what I was complaining about with they kind of stealth Snap in there. In fact, if you go out to the command line and do an apt-get install Chrome or an apt-get install Firefox, instead of saying we don't supply this, please use Snap, they just install the Snap without asking, which kind of, in fact, Linux Mint did a whole thing where they don't do that. They reverted to the old behaviors. Like if you're using the package manager, it should install what you're expecting, not work around you, because Linux Mint is Ubuntu based. The other major complaint against Snap is the backend's proprietary. So there's a couple other sandbox package formats out there, AppImage and Flatpak. Flatpak is what Fedora uses. Snap is owned by Canonical. Only Canonical can run Snap repositories. There's not any kind of open way to do that. It does have some technical superior advantages. You can use Snap to sandbox a command line application, whereas Flatpak will only work on GUI applications. But I do think it is a little slower. I have a couple of actually pretty heavy applications. I run the Flatpak version of OBS on my machine, and it's just this. I mean, it's all it does is video transcoding, basically in the back end, and it. And I run the Flatpak because the Fedora Fedora is super puritanical about, what they include. And so they don't include a lot of the non-free extensions for OBS. And so you have to either compile it yourself or run the Flatpak version that's got like the some of the Chromium stuff in it for like the web chats and stuff like that. So that's why I use that, and it's pretty fast. Like I said, I do kind of there are some advantages of doing it this way. I do kind of wonder, in the age of resource shortages and global warming, how smart it is to continually write software that just, munches and munches resources, because now they're talking, they want to containerize the whole OS, which jacks your RAM and CPU needs way up, and it's going to throw a lot of more stuff into the landfill. And, so it's, I kind of wonder about it in regards to that. And ever increasing complexity. There's greater security in these things, but there's also greater complexity, and greater complexity just gives more attack surface. So it's just no one's figured it out yet. Figured out how to do that. So but yeah, Flatpak seems to be the Red Hat choice, seems to be the way that a lot of other places are leaning, just because anyone can set up their own Flatpak server, Flatpak repository. It's open. Where Snapd is closed. But yeah, Snapd was a lot of my big problem with Ubuntu recently. That and the brown. Yeah. So yeah, that you kind of ran into that. I haven't, like I said, as a Dan's point about being slower, I've heard that, but I don't really have any hard benchmarks to show how much slower. I know theming's a problem with it, whereas if you have, like, they don't look like a Flatpak application, it looks like my desktop. I think a Snap application, if you've made some tweaks to fonts or something like that, they sometimes don't inherit that, I've heard, but I don't know for sure.
Well, one thing I've noticed is that the little Firefox icon, the desktop icon, doesn't always come back the same way. It comes back as a generic icon. It doesn't pick that up for some reason, and I'm assuming it's just a little glitch in the software. Oh, I did want to say one more thing, and that is going back to the solution to too much tech is more tech. I had, kicking and screaming, held on to my flip phone as long as I thought I could, and finally I think they phased out all those, what do they call it, the number 2, whereas we're up to 5 now. Anyway, the mobile phones.
5G.
5G, yeah. I was at like 2G or something
Right.
like that. So they said no more, can't do it. So I was dragged kicking and screaming to the store, and I got a Samsung phone. So finally, after upgrading to this new 5G stuff, I get a note from Samsung saying they've been hacked and that my data has been compromised. So, thank you very much.
Uh-oh.
Well, how much data could you have put on it in that
Uh,
time?
Knowing me, not much, but then who knows what you can do with the thin end of a wedge, So who knows?
Well, it is past time. I'm not going to kick anyone out, but I kind of wanted to just briefly say, because I feel I've been neglectful in my duties to crack the whip. But if anyone has any expertise they'd like to share, like Lander was just speaking about OBS, I know it's something that's come up on his side and might be something would be interest to a broader audience. Or Drupal was mentioned various points in time, and if anyone wanted to talk about that or other CMS or other type of products. Again, I just, or if there's anything people know that I know about that they'd like me to present on. It's just been a while since we've had a presentation. I think we all know why that is, because Dave's not here, man. That's my second Cheech and Chong reference for the day, just in case anyone noticed that.
Brent, I think I did the last 2 presentations now.
That's true. You're the new Dave. Uh, for sure. We're not talking to you with this.
Okay.
You're doing your part for sure. So if anyone other than Dan could cobble together a presentation, certainly let me know. You don't have to answer now, but yeah, I'll be racking my brain on what I might be able to present. But yeah, I think we need to up our content game. And again, thanks Dan for what you've been doing in that regard. So I myself, my stomach is rumbling and I need to eat something. So I'm going to depart. But like I said, I'm not kicking you all out. So talk to you later.